is Mark Fultz, the Fat Psychic. Welcome to Universal Truth. And I am coming to you from WBHM-DB in beautiful downtown Birmingham, Alabama. And talking to you from my cute, tiny little haunted house near Pensacola, Florida. And I am back with you, my darlings. The Fat Psychic has been away, so he's back. Now, um, right now, I think we're just finishing up Mercury in retrograde. I don't know about y'all, but the this one had an undertow to it. I have had more weird things happen to me than I can explain. I can't explain some of it on here because it's just too special. So I hope all of y'all have lived through this retrograde unscathed. And if you wonder what a retrograde is, when it's the planets do a thing, and then it had an eclipse thrown in at this time. So it was crazy. I mean, we have had everything horrible, horrible, horrible things, funny things, but a lot of horrible things. So I'm quite ready for it to move on. So I hope you are too. So now, for anyone that is just now signing in and doesn't know what a universal truth is with a fat psychic named Mark Fultz, I am a psychic medium. I do channeling. I do all sorts of stuff. I was murdered 32 years ago. Came back from that. Um, and did the near death experiences, and it helped my talents. I've been in metaphysics 44 years, and you can tell by looking at the wrinkles on my face. And I have been doing this, working in the public on and off for 44 years, doing it in stores, working in groups, and also just being solitary. And so, what we cover on this show, we do metaphysical issues. A lot of times I do a lot of ghost stories on my radio show. Where it was the audio, I did a lot of ghost stories. So I'm going to have to come back and do some ghost stories on this thing. Because now you can see me. And I will tell you some of my great ghost stories that I enjoy. Because I think I have about 300 or 400 in my collections. A lot of them I've investigated, or they've been told to me, or I've found through research, and there's people coming to me with ghost stories. So next week I have to be out of town. So next week they'll probably have a replay. But the next one after that, into May, I will do a ghost one and tell ghost stories. Now, we cover anything from ghost, metaphysical issues, Anunnaki, which are the history of the people who came, that the history of the Anunnaki, who the written records of the Sumerians talk about, and so who we would call people from up there, and people from other places. Which we're trying to do right now. We're trying to go to other places and try to go to other um, planets and mess it up just like we did this one. So we would do just like they did, except they were a little bit more highly developed than we are now, even now. And so we talk about alien stuff, we talk about ghosts, we'll eventually talk about UFO. Because I actually have seen UFOs. Uh, and actually, by covering that, I'll tell you in a minute. But what I'm going to talk about tonight, my darlings, is I'm going to talk about portals, dimensions, and the boneless ones. And where I come from, see, when I started into metaphysics, the person I knew that trained me, I knew him in the 70s, but so I knew him about a year or two before I really became really good friends. So even though I started at 18, 16, 17, I kept running into this individual. And so that was in the 70s. So when I started, um, or just right after the 70s, it would have been the early 80s. And everything that I learned in my early phase, my life now, I go that phase, this phase. Every 7 years is kind of like a phase. And the first part of my learning, my training, because my life has been very strange. I've been led down many paths, and none of them are what I was born into. I mean, I was just drawn. I just had something in me. I had a compass in me. And the first time I was around groups, it was the leftover from the 70s. Because the 60s and 70s, the hippie movement ushered in a large metaphysical movement. And along with metaphysical TV and entertainment, so, there was like Bewitched, Genie, my favorite Martians, that kind of stuff. Then there were Dark Shadows, where the hippies really, and the kids really, the only soap opera ever in the world where children would run home to watch a soap opera. That was supposed to be something their mamas watched. And, but you would see these witches and werewolves and magic and costumes and beautiful antiques and everyone was fascinated with the look, the antiques, the old days, the old ways, because we were in those eras in the 60s and 70s. It was a very tumultuous like it is now, except probably more, because we had the Vietnam War, we had our president was killed, his brother was killed, Martin Luther King was killed, Marilyn Monroe died, a lot of icons that the 50s seemed very fun, and the 60s started off very chaotic. And with that chaotic atmosphere, along with the Vietnam kind of thing, there was a rebellion against, in society, against everything that was the norm. So all the hippies, if it was from the 50s, if your parents liked it, they didn't like it. And if they liked curvaceous women like Marilyn Monroe, Jay Mansfield, we wanted our women to look like sticks. And they did. And, women were doing their hair in very fancy hairdos. Well, a lot of the women started ironing their hair out, So it was just a total rebellion against everything. So into the 60s and 70s came the rebellion of belief systems, structures, and people were looking for something new, and really what they got was something old, which was the metaphysical movements that came from Europe, from England, and from brought in by Gerald Gardner, Alexander's, Sybil Leek, people like this. Scott Cunningham he was actually in the 80s and 90s and died like at 36. And before then, he put out like 36 of the best books on the market for using for he lived just a little bit of time and he turned out something that is still used, something that is still viable, something that is still structured, because he was very structured. And everyone at that time was expected to be structured. You know, you were expected to know your ABCs, but you were expected to know more than that. And the thing with metaphysics, when it came in, when the movements came in, when Gardnerian came in, when Alexandria came in, when Wicca as a whole moved in, then, you know, it was just a whole different mindset because you were coming out of the Wicca that came from Europe was very structured. It came from covens. It didn't come from just, you know, someone sitting on their couch reading a book. It came from covens. It came from structure. It came from, you know, you had to do this and learn this and blah, blah, blah. So when I joined into the metaphysical movement, it was a very structured affair. And it was the very tail end of it, right before it became New Age. So you had to learn uh, basic energy. You know, basic Wicca is basic earth energies, earth, you know, learning how to you fit into the flow of things and you know who you are defining yourself as, who you are defining your consciousness as, who you are you know, we were raised in a society of very Christian Catholic society, you know, and so you had to figure out what your point of reference was, and it was a little different than, you know, what we were all raised with. And but it was very pleasant, you know. For me, it was a very pleasant. That part was a very pleasant experience, and it's something that is still part of my life. Of course, you know, as you grow older, which of course I have, you evolve and you become your own sense of what's right, wrong, and um, what's bigger than you, and how it all works. So then, you know, then when it became kind of an end, because in the 70s and 80s, a lot of these old time people who brought all this stuff from Europe, they all started dying out. So, and people didn't want all the structure. They wanted to be in it and play in it, but they didn't always want the structure. So, you know, then at that time, you know, it just became old hat, you know, but I'm very glad that I came along just right when I did, because I learned so many disciplines that I wouldn't know anything else. You know, I wouldn't know. And then when I started going into when you become a psychic and working in the field, you have to know what you're dealing with. People come to you with problems that sometimes are very superficial. Then there are some that bring you problems that are very dark and very severe. And I deal with people all the time having to keep people from committing suicide, people who've done things that they've got things in their field that they should not have. Then you have to know how to remove that, remedy that situation, or remove that problem. People come with things attached, basically, that you just have to, as a technician, know how to pull that off without putting it in yourself. You know what to do with it. So where I came from, there were I mean, I'm going to get it straight to people because a lot of, you know, there's a lot of people out there doing ritual and magic and things like that, and hodgepodgey, and not keeping, you know, they don't understand their medical energy field, you know, kind of thing. And they just go and do these things and leave it running or do things they shouldn't do. just because they want to do it. And that then they think that's okay, just because I wanna. Everything you don't do anything unless you know what you're doing. You don't do something just because you. It has to have a purpose and a reason. That's where I came from. Just because you want to poke something ain't always a good reason. Just because you want to play magic or play ritual or play with energy doesn't mean it's going to end well for you. You have to be structured. You really, in my case, I think you need to be trained. I think train yourself if nothing else. But, get off your lazy ski and learn something before you get out there and play. Because I have had to deal with a lot of people who've been playing with stuff or doing things they shouldn't. So, then you have ghosts and ghost hunters and people going into places that have ritually, it's one thing to see a ghost and know what you're dealing with. Then it's another thing if you go into somewhere where someone has ritually done something that has opened a portal or has left a portal running or there's an ulcerated hole in the dimensional wall that needs to be attended to. Um, a basic psychic doesn't always know those things. So what to do with it? They may see it, but they may not know what to do about it. In my case, I'm a psychic, but I'm also an energy technician. When I was being raised up in that field, there were a lot of, at that time, there were a lot of people who considered themselves high magicians. They were doing high ceremony, high magic. And I will tell you truly, all the ones that were practicing high magic, not one of them ended up happy. Not one of them ended up beautiful, rich, famous, nothing. They ended up very unhappy. And for some reason, the majority of what they did was to impress others. Well, stick to magic tricks. Go get a rabbit in a hat if it's that. Because they did things they shouldn't have done that didn't benefit them in the end. There wasn't a real reason for it. I did see some things I ain't never seen before. I don't ever want to see again. Just because it's not worth the cost, for a lot of people. And a lot of people go, oh yeah, yes, I want to do it. I'm gonna go, go for it. But each one of those people I knew, they're all dead. They were all eaten by whatever, eaten up by stuff that they shouldn't have put their hands in. And for what reason? You know, was it a good outcome? So when I'm talking about these things and I'm talking about dimensions and I'm talking about other things, uh, I think everyone that is interested in those things should know these things, but they should also know, everything has to be. You have to be careful. You have to be knowledgeable. And you can't just go stick in your hand and stuff. I see people all the time coming to me with that have just stuck their hands in stuff they shouldn't have. So that's one thing I'm going to have to do. This is kind of learning for some people who listen because I know there's a few out there who do listen and are curious. Um, and there are ghost hunters I've known that go to places and do things they shouldn't, and then wonder why they have a problem, or they run into things they don't know what they're looking at. And right now we have quite a few exorcist type movies coming out. Then that usually means we have a run on people who want to play with demonology, who want to play with demons and dark energies and all of that a lot of times because it's a fad. It's a cycle. This is a cycle that goes on. It started in the 70s. And it goes every 10 or so years we go through it. And then everybody goes to the bookstore, buys their Necronomicon, and then they go to it. And then they wonder why their life goes to hell. Literally in abyss. Not really hell, but it goes, kerplunk. Um, just because it's an entertainment and it's entertaining, it really shouldn't. It's really not. There's a lot of things out there in the world that you just should not address or fool with. If there's not a need, um, you should only ever do something if it is a needed thing in your life, and a lot of this stuff is not. And a lot of people go, well, the Nemicon, they go, well, that's a fake book. Blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you something. There are a lot of seeds of truth in that thing that work. And so, whatever it was made from, whoever came up with it, however it was put together, they took some old stuff that does do. And just even if it didn't, the intent to do some of the stuff in there is just enough to bring up energy. And a lot of energy is neutral. And then if you apply that energy to it, it becomes whatever you're applying to it. So, can be dangerous stuff. So right now we've got Al Pacino going to be in an Exorcist movie. We've got several Exorcist movies out. We've got, and then everybody fancies themselves an exorcist or a demonologist, especially after Ed and Lorraine Warren's fame, with everything. Everybody goes, ooh, I want to be a demonologist. And if you want to learn about those things, fine, learn about them. But demons are a very rare thing. So it's not like, you're just going to run into one around the corner. So a lot of people get bored and they try to create their own or pull their own or dig down where they live in the deep, dark recesses of energy in the world. And uh, that's just what, you know, and that's when you have to go, bye bye. We'll see you after they eat you. you Um, I was raised around people who did high magic. I had to learn about high magic, ceremonial magic, to be able to defend myself and be able to understand what I was looking at. Because as a psychic, I have gone into a place in Chattanooga that a bishop came, cleansed, didn't work. I went in, I did the energy work because you treat it like energy instead of from a spiritual stance. You do it as energy, you push it out, and it worked. Um, so you when you get into this business, you have to understand. You got to know your business. If you're going to fix air conditioners, you better know how to fix an air conditioner. If you're going to be a psychic, you better understand what you're looking at, because not everything is just a discarnate ghost or a spirit um, or you may be dealing with something that has been pulled up, or something that is needs to be put back, or something that needs to be closed, or something that needs to be cleansed, or something that needs, you know, anything, So right now, because of the entertainment value of fear, people get into these things, and then we go through it. We go through these cycles. So this, I'm going to talk and describe dimensions, portals, some of the energies that are in these layers of energy I will talk to you about. And I will try to make it as understandable as I can. That's one of my gifts, I think, is to break it down where I go, see this. Because if you don't understand it, see, I used to know teachers and they would act like they were all grand and everything. And if you asked a question, they go, for me to know and you to find out, like you were stupid. Then I'd find out they didn't know a damn thing. They just were, you know, but they wanted you to find it by yourself on your own. And you do, you find it out through your own exploration. And some of the things that have gone on. I mean, I have had people when back in the after Witchboard came out, there were a lot of people using the Ouija boards. Well, which it can be a safe game. Sometimes it's not really a game. It's not really for children. But this real sweet girl, I remember, she worked for a veterinarian, and she and a friend were using this Ouija board, and they got scared and they threw it into a closet without closing it. You hit go hello, you close it, goodbye. They threw it in the closet, didn't close it. So then this dead guy was following her around. So 3 days later, she waited 3 days, and then she came in there to where I worked. And I mean, seriously. Now, she was always prim and proper and fixed and sweet. She came in, her hair, how Madonna hair used to, it would just stick straight up. Her hair was sticking straight up. Look, and she hadn't slept in days. And I said, and I could see this dead person following her. And I said, "Where'd you get your dead boyfriend?" And she told me, and I said, "Bring me the board." She had it in her car. And the board, because they didn't close it, it was an open portal. It was an opening. It's like you take the door off the handles, and then whatever can come in comes in. So I took the board, I closed it, then we got rid of it. And that way she wouldn't have to worry about it again. And but she was on the verge of suicide. I've had people come in that have had all sorts of horrifying things happen to them. From and not just because of things they did. Things that people have left running in their houses. I've lived in places, purposely went to places that had things going on so I could see how to deal and get over the shock value of it and learn how to deal with it like a doctor. Because that's really kind of what you have to be. And so for ghost hunters and things, you hear a lot of people going, "Oh, that's a portal." Well, if you really ask them, all right, it's a portal. What makes a portal? They don't know how to explain that. What's a dimension? Well, a lot of people don't know how to describe that either. They know it's there somewhere. They know that science says there's some, even though science hadn't found a way to show it. There's dimensions. Um, so what's a dimension made out of? Uh, what are we made out of? How do we fit into dimensions? How our energy functions? How does it fit into the world around us? What are dimensions? What are we fit? We fit into dimensions all the time. We're going through dimensions all the time. And we have to understand our place in the energy and in the energy that's around us. And in when you see things like a portal, then if you understand what the portal is made out of, how it's structured, why is it open? What's holding it open? There's a reason in a way that it keeps open. And so I will try and explain, because I'm always mentioning electromagnetic fields, electromagnetic plasma. I'm getting that into people's heads because it's your basic understanding. If you understand your energy, then your energy going into that energy and passing through that energy or being exposed to that energy, then you have a bigger understanding of what to do with that. So, I'm going to start with our energy, what we're made out of, before we go into the dimensions. Because the dimensional material is where the portals are. That's where uh, that material comes from, but we're made out of some of the same material. And then out of that, those dimensional walls, what they're made out of, the material, what our ectoplasm is, what our material is. Um, when we come into contact with those things, how are we affected? How do we affect it? How do we take care of these problems? So I'm going to break it down a little bit to. I did bring along some illustrations. I thought, oh, I better draw a picture. So I drew some pictures. Now I'm an artist. Actually a pretty good artist. But these are not it. But these will be basic, and that you'll understand a little bit. So I'm going to talk about how when I talk about us. Okay, you see the figure. Look at the figure. All right, think of this. All right, we have several forms. All right, you have plasma is like jello, just literally clear jello. So you have your physical form, your mineral form. Okay, we have 3,800 minerals in our bodies. No wonder we turn to dirt when we die. That's what happens. You turn back to dirt because we have 3,800 minerals, 21 of them essential. So, we didn't know we were made out of so much dirt, but we is. But, so the mineral form, the skin, the flesh, that's one form. But inside that form, as we function, as we grow, as the spirit develops, we have a plasma form. So you have this plasma form inside the meat vehicle, the mineral vehicle. This is a mineral vehicle. Now, so you have a plasma form. Okay? Now, some of that plasma, 55% of that plasma, deals with our blood. It has platelets, it has cells, it has organisms. So 55% of our plasma is blood related. So, if you go to give plasma, they take that out of they separate, the blood. Now, and then, so it is something a fluid that holds everything together. Holds all the platelets, and blood platelets, they are used to clot. If you get a cut and it clots it around the thing and stops the bleeding. There's a reason I'm telling you this, so remember that. The platelets stop bleeding. They help clotting if there's a problem or a leak. And they carry other things, but that's, it's your band-aid. It's a natural band-aid. So now, the other part, we have 55% is you have plasma, but then we have a 100% plasma form that all of that fits into. And into that, in our plasma, we have chloroplast, we have iron, magnetite, which is what's in our third eye, which helps us with our third eye. It helps us with our electromagnetic field. So we'll get into that. And plasma is, I have to remember how to put this, it's the fourth state. So there's like plasma, liquid, gas, Um, something else. What am I looking for? What is it? Oh, it's solids, gas, liquid, and plasma. So it's like a fourth level, a fourth state, a fourth stage. So that's us. We have what I call the gummy bear form inside of us. That's where the spirit and everything is copied. It's a complete copy of us. Of whatever you see here, it's a complete copy of that. So when you die and the mineral part full of the 3,800 minerals falls over, the plasma form of you can function. And that's where the spirit is. And the spirit is in the third eye, which is at the top. You see the little hole round thing I drew. I can't I'm having to see backwards. Um but the third eye, when it's functioning, what it does, it from the time you're connected into your body, the third eye and the electromagnetic field it creates because of the pumping of the blood circulating with the iron, and the iron that's here in the third eye, it creates an electromagnetic field that makes an aura around you. Now, told y'all before that I have a very strange thing I can do because I can see auras. I can see my aura. But if I pull my aura, like you're pulling your shirt away, and look down, because I can see each aura color is a layer. So it coats the body completely. So there's like, if there's seven chakra colors, there are seven layers of that. So your bottom layer, when you look down at your body underneath, is like this greenish, swampyish, greenish, darkish material with like um the fibers, like if you peel an orange, you get that little fiberish stuff. It's like covered with that, and that's part of ectoplasm. And so when you die, then your form becomes because of the chloroplast. It makes a greenish, algae-ish kind of thing. So then the spirit becomes greenish because it's using that chloroplast to feed. So heat, sun, light can feed the electromagnetic plasma form. If if the person doesn't transition, if they transition, that form gets absorbed before you get to the consciousness. You go up a dendrite or tunnel, it gets absorbed. If you don't go on, then you have to find a way to be able to eat. And that's how ghosts and spirits eat. So you've got that going. But the reason I'm showing this, the third eye makes the aura. Because I'm going to tell you how dimensions are made. And how dimensions are made through the earth functioning. And then out of the earth, how a dimension is made. What's the dimension made out of? How do we function in dimensions? Then how does dimensions get portals? And then out of those portals, deep down in those portals, what's down in there? And that's when we get into the boneless ones. So just, covering it very simply. So I'm going to talk about the earth now. This is a very bad drawing of the earth, but it's half of the earth. Okay, so the center is hot, melted iron and magma. And you see these little things here? That's supposed to mean the poles. The poles of the earth. And right there. Alright, so what happens? Let's just start with saying the energy comes from this center of the earth. The molten lava, the molten metal swirling, doing its thing. Out here, then the dirt, then the surface thing with the surface skin with trees, and then atmosphere. The Earth is a self-regulatory living being, so it makes its own air, water, everything. And so what happens is when the energy from the center of the Earth comes out the poles, just like with the humans, where the third eye kicks in and it starts an aura, the dimensions are part of the energy that comes out of the earth, goes around the outer part of the earth. It makes an aura. It's the earth's aura. It's its electromagnetic field. So it's an aura unto itself. Now, see, the way that I believe, the earth is a living organism. The center is really kind of like an embryo. And also if you look at it from a distance and think of it, the earth like a neuron. And so this would be the nucleus of the neuron. Everything kind of replicates neurons. But it's kind of like an embryo. So there's a living center that keeps everything alive because of this energy. And the aura comes out this way. So then there's an aura around the earth, like we have an aura that comes around us, an electromagnetic field. Now, if you look at the planets from above, see if this is where the poles are, and there's an aura around it. What it is it stretches 2 times a year. So when this energy comes out, as it's covering the earth, it makes bands of energy, electromagnetic bands. That's what makes a dimension. So if you look at this, if we can make this understandable, say this is the earth, this is the bands of the aura around the earth. So this is the bands of energy, the dimensional hallways that we travel through. Now see, since they came from the center of the earth, that energy has been magnetized. So what happens when the fresh energy goes around the outside of the earth? After a while, that energy begins to pull back down because it's been magnetized. So what it does is it gets older, it begins to be pulled back down toward the center of the earth to cleanse itself. So what happens is it's recycling. So the energy comes out from the center, goes to the outer, then it begins its descent coming down toward the earth, going back towards the center of the earth, getting cleansed, coming back out. So it continuously is making fresh aura, making fresh magnetic bands. Those are dimensional hallways that we pretty much go through all the time. So now, as the bands get older, they pull down from the outer atmosphere and they go back towards the center of the earth, magnetized, pull back down, cleansed, go back out the poles. That's how dimensions are made, in my opinion. Now, as the dimensions are pulling back toward the earth, and we are in the middle of these dimensions. They're very flexible plasma material. As they come down towards the earth, they get thicker, older. They pick up they're filtering out the air, the pollution, the thoughts, the energy, whatever is being put out there, so it's a electromagnetic plasma itself. So it's pulling these electromagnetic hallways that are around us as they get older, like tree, it's kind of like tree rings. You get them out, but these recycle, pull down, pull the energy, and then the ones we're in eventually will pull down past us, and the fresher ones come, and we're in the fresher energy as it's cycling. So when that's happening, it's like oil being made. How is oil made? Well, oil is made by animals dying, trees dying, plants dying, degrading, seeping into the earth. And you would think it's dead material, but that oil, that it becomes oil is like a sludge. But this is what happens with the energy of the dimensions as they come down to the surface of the earth, and then they begin to pull down towards the center of the earth to be recleansed, and then shot back out the poles. It's like oil. It's picking up all of it, so it gets heavier, and it picks up oil-like energy, sludge energy. That's thinking material. It's the energy is thinking, doing, and being cleansed doesn't make it where it doesn't have that energy in it. It's recorded into it. It just cleanses out to the higher frequencies. When it goes through the magma, that cleanses it. But it keeps some of the high frequency recording because it's like recorded into that sludge. So, oil is a very important component. We don't think about it that way, but what it does is the earth has it to it's its own. If you don't put oil in your car, your engine will crack. It will break. So the oil is actually something the earth has to use. It's using it as a natural protectant between that heat and the earth, the flesh of the earth. And if there isn't enough oil in between the earth and the magma, we get cracks. That's why we get earthquakes. That's why we get um, sinkholes sometimes and all that stuff, because we're pulling out the oil. So the earth doesn't have enough oil to do what it was doing naturally. The earth was making it naturally to protect itself. So as the dimension walls move through the field of the earth, move through us, go down, all the old energy is like a thinking sludge that goes into the darker, deeper layers. Doesn't mean it's bad, it just means it's a thinking sludge. Lots of information. Before it's cleansed, it's got a lot of information. But it has to go like 1,000 feet down or more before it starts to hit the heat. And then when it hits the heat, then it begins to cleanse, and then it becomes a different form of plasma. It just comes out as clean plasma. So, uh, let me try to so we've got, if you understand, we have the hallways, the strips, the bands of electromagnetic plasma that are around us. That's the hallway. We're going through them all the time. Okay, now here we go with science. Science goes, well, we think there's at least 7 to 11 dimensions. We just don't know how to show it. Well, metaphysical people have known for centuries what a dimension is. They know what a hallway is. They know what that dimension is. They know the veil. We don't think that it's there. We know it's there. And I have been very happy to see it sometimes. I have been very blessed to be able to see the material of the dimensions. And I thought, well, why can't they see it? Why can't they find it? Well, they go, it doesn't exist unless we can put it under a microscope. Well, they couldn't find their own butt with a microscope in a lot of ways because people think that scientists know everything. Well, they don't. If they know everything, why can't they cure the common cold? Why can't they cure things like herpes, AIDS, syphilis, cancer? They can't. And actually, a lot of what medicine has given us poisons us and makes us as sick as the disease is sometimes. Sometimes there's medicine that's wonders and helps. I take medicine that helps me, but I've also taken medicines before that have about killed me. So, science doesn't, they're still groping in the dark. Science is very young. Metaphysics, Indians, Native Americans, earthy people, they've known centuries. There's a dimension, there's another world. We live in it, we're part of it, we're made of it. We are there. So this stuff exists. We don't act like it doesn't exist because we can't see it. Uh, there's plenty of things I can't see that I believe in. And there's plenty of stuff I've seen that I would love to be able to show people. But, uh, I think I would be able to take someone and say, here's a dimensional wall. I know a place where you can see the dimensional wall. I can. It's in a special, very weird place. Um, and I think if they put their equipment on it, you could see it. You could measure a dimension. We think there's out there, but we can't prove it yet. Well, the collider was invented. Well, it proves there's no ghost because we can't see it. Well, there's a lot you can't see, darlings. So, uh, ghosts and everything else out there, it's all, in my opinion, it's all real. It's all there. Um, it's just not available to we're not detecting it. We're not that advanced to detect it. We can get to the moon, but not without a problem. We can't really travel to the bottom of the ocean. We're not as advanced as we think we are. And then when people get mad, they shoot bombs at each other. So that we're not really advanced. We're not using our heads. So there's a lot out there to find and to do and to look at. And metaphysical people are the old scientists. We know what's out there. It's we know that it's just right there. So, um, dimensions. You have these dimensional hallways. We pass through them all the time. They are a plasma as well. Now, the material it's made of, it's very hard for me to describe what it looks like to me. But when I've seen it, it's like the plasma is almost like a grayish color, like a slightly gray jello. Now, in that jello, there are these little, and what plasma does, like in our blood plasma, our plasma holds the platelets. It holds organisms. It holds cells. So the plasma is a container, basically. It's the fluid that holds these things that these things live in. So in the dimensional wall, woo, knocked my laptop off. That was fun. Let's do that one again. Um, the dimensional material has these, to me, the only way I can describe them, it looks like if you took like a window screen and covered it with tons and tons of rice and shimmied it, you would see the rice kind of vibrating. And doing that, they're not exactly like threads. They look more like rice to me. And I started thinking about it. And I go, well, they remind me of platelets in a way, blood platelets. which help clotting in the blood. Which explains to me the next phase, which is portals. What's a portal? A portal is a hole or an ulcer that develops in that dimensional wall. Now, see, we are in dimensional hallways, so there are many, many, many hallways. The ones closest to us, if you go through that material, we pass through quite a bit of it. The hallways are also filled with like a fluid as well, some kind of plasma. So we're going to say maybe that's some kind of dark material, dark matter. I don't know. But it's some kind of fluid where, when you look around your room, you're looking and you think, oh, it's empty. You're looking around my room and you say, well, there's air. Well, there's not really air, just air. It is a fluid, an invisible fluid. We are encased in invisible fluids. So in this dimensional hall, they're full of that fluid. The wall is like a living, fleshy plasma skin that those vibrating little rice looking things, I'm going to call them platelets, because they do a lot like platelets do with blood, and I'll explain. Now, when you go to a place that has a portal, what's a portal? Now, see, when you see this is a terrible drawing, but this is like, let's say this is the grayish plasma gelatin skin of the wall of the dimension, and there's a hole in it. Well, why would there be a hole in a dimensional wall? Good question. Let's say that something happened traumatic that had a lot of frequency to it, and when you put frequency onto the dimensional wall, it will split. That vibrating material will it's vibrated like this, and it will vibrate away, and it will open 2 times a year. The veil stretches because of the pull from the poles on the earth. It will pull that like taffy, and when it does, they vibrate, they separate, the veil tears, and we get a lot of activity. Then when it relaxes, they vibrate back together. It doesn't normally stay open. It doesn't make an ulcer. Now, if something has happened energy-wise, which has kept an opening in the material for a long time, then what happens? Because of the platelets, the whatever that material is that's in the flesh, the living flesh of the dimensional wall, it will try to close around that hole that the frequency is keeping open. Well, it can't do it. So what it does, if you get a scratch, your blood platelets will make a scab around it to try and close it. So what happens is those platelets start to make a scab around it. So the hole becomes a open wound, and it makes like a thick, crusty thing from the platelets make like a crust around it. And if the frequency keeps up for a while, then it makes a permanently open energy ulcer. Now, if the energy calms down a little bit, the platelets will try to do like try to make like a skin over the hole, but if it's thin enough, energy will still come through. It will filter out what comes through some, but energy can still come through. So, and if the energy is intense enough, it will cauterize those platelets. So then you get a hard, crusty scab around excuse me, that's irritating me, uh, that portal. So then the portal is an opening, an ulcer in the dimensional wall. Now, as a technician, if I go into a place and someone says, well, there's a portal, that doesn't always mean there's a portal. There can be energy spots. That's a little differently, they can be a lot gentler than a portal. A cauterized open doorway in the dimensional way can be closed. If you understand frequency and you understand how to find the hole, then you take and do frequency work on the edges of the cauterized scab, the hole, the opening. It will break up that clotted material. And then when it's broken loose, it can vibrate and be free and it will mend itself. The dimensional walls are magnetic, so they heal themselves. You can cut it, you can part it. It will heal itself. If you burn a hole into it and it's an ulcer, it will build around the ulcer. So then if you want to close the portal, you go in as an energy technician, break up that material, let the hole close. So that's one thing there. Now, doorways. In magic, what people do, and there's particular things that I've seen that people do, which is not very wise, is, when I was talking about, you have like the energy that comes from, the top of the aura of the earth is high frequency, and as it comes closer to us, it's getting older, it's getting thicker, and then beneath us is the more degrading, getting older energy, which is a thinking sludge. And sometimes there are levels and pools of old energy that are 2,000 and 3,000 years old that haven't been cleansed because they've been like in crevices or holes or pools or so there's stuff from way back before the Egyptians sometimes that still exists. Some of the oil we use before it's processed still has a lot of consciousness in it sometimes. So um, people will punch holes in those dimensional walls and make a portal. And a portal can happen because of energy, an expansive energy for whatever reason, like an accident or something very intense. But if you open a doorway, that's a different thing. And that, in the old magic, that was brought to us by the ancient people. There were ancient peoples, the first things they gave to the Sumerians were makeup, magic, and mirrors because they thought we were ugly. So they were like, here, fix yourselves up. Here's something to work with. So they brought their energy and their magic. And so there are old systems where people make layers because those older dimensional layers, there are ways to reach down into those layers, down into that thinking sludge, down into the older levels where thousands ago there were doorways made that ceremoniously people made to do ritual through to call forth spirits and energies from the ancients. And now we don't have any need for it. Really, we don't have any need for it. And if it's not benefiting your life, you don't need to be doing it. But, and like I said, most of the magicians I knew, they all died ugly, unhappy, ugly lives. Didn't help them. So it's not a beneficial thing. So the older doorways, when they talk about doorways or they entertainment, they make those. That is an old cauterized hole made through a dimensional that someone punched a hole in there through ritual, through magic, through specifics to get to a certain level. and there are old doorways that are there, so they will get a skin over them, but they are cauterized. They have the crust around them, and they're old. And if you go to those energies, then that's where you start to find the energies that it's so old, it's still thinking, it has consciousness. It could be from old religious beliefs. It's kind of like subconscious material. And some of that stuff could be very malignant because it's just sludge. It's thinking hungry sludge. Just like everything in our life, you know, what we have going on in our bodies is a reflection of what's going on in the world around us. The plasma that's in our bodies is like the plasma that's in the dimensional walls. It's like the electromagnetic fields that are out there. We have our own mechanism for it. All the animals have it. All the insects have it. The butterflies have them. You know, they fly all over the world they've never been to, thousands of miles they've never been to a specific place. You know, because of electromagnetic fields that tell them what to do. And so you have this old sludge that's layers and layers and layers down, and uh, if it's thinking, you know, uh, just like in real life, you know, you've seen amoebas. If you see anything under a microscope, you'll see these just round blobs of things that are just like eating stomachs. They just go and eat, and they have an understanding somehow that they're where the food is, how to eat it. So there's a consciousness there to understand how to eat. And even in, you know, under the microscope, you'll see these strange shaped, formless creatures, formless beings that are just stomachs that eat. And they think they have some kind of sensing device because they know where the food is. Well, in this darker layers and ancient levels of consciousness, and not just inner space but outer space, but we have inner space. There's a lot of ancient levels of inner space that we access through those ways sometimes, and you have to be very careful. um, but not me, but I mean, I know of it. You know, I know what I'm looking at when I look at it. And I know when stuff looks back at you and it thinks you're food. And the way to put it is if you've ever watched The Blob, just think about some of this material. It's when I say the boneless ones, it's the ones that it's energies from other places, from ancient energies that have existed, that have never died, but they didn't have the mineral vessel we do. They don't have the bones. They didn't live as people. That doesn't mean they're not alive. See, we have a hard concept thinking, well, if it's not looks like us, it's not really, or it doesn't have a body, it's not really alive and thinking. And we have that concept problem. There's a lot of energy out there that's lived a long time. It just doesn't have the physical form we do. And that's what I'm calling the boneless ones. So when you get into that level, say one time when I was 20, I guess, this person I knew was doing this high ceremonial magic stuff that I didn't know they were doing at the moment. And I went to their house, and I was staying with them for a little bit. And I went into the basement to do laundry, of all things, you know. And they had opened a doorway in their basement, of all places, and doing their magic. And I got exposed to one of those doorways. He just had that open. And what happens is when you get your aura gets in contact with it, you know, and you're sitting there going to do laundry. You're not expecting to see something unique, and it's just like whoosh, it's superimposed. You're seeing it with your third eye, so you see the cauterized opening. And below that, beyond that, it's like everything looks like it's in underwater. It's just flowing in this kind of fluid. And it looked like larvae. And then one of the larvae got close enough to my aura and it turned into something. And of course, I was like, I think I'll go upstairs now. Because I was like, I don't know what that is. And that's how I found out what that was. And he's like, oh, I left that running. Um, but that was one of the lower doors. Like, people, when they say like the sixth, the seventh door, whatever, you're going to a specific level with specific energies that have been created through consciousness and through ritual centuries ago that still exist. So when you get into those, that's what that was. And I thought, you don't really need to be doing that, because that person ended up dying of leukemia. Because that stuff is very hungry. Um, when you when you become in contact with it, and people do things like that to pull up energies that they feel like I'm going to control this. It's like a toddler. You don't know. You cannot control that any more than you can a toddler. You might can hold certain things at bay for a little bit, but you cannot control another energy any more than you can a person. So you shouldn't do it. So they did that. They were doing that kind of stuff, and it ate them. Uh, and It's not something you see every day. Um, and it's not me telling it so that, ooh, let me run out and go do this. It ate them. It made their lives terrible. And it's not that that stuff was necessarily evil or whatever. It's just it was old energy. You don't go using old energy that hasn't been exposed to fresh meat for a long time because they're in a degrading, deeper, older, sludgish material. They're not getting fresh meat. So when you go to those things and they go, oh, you smell great, that's about how it is. So that's why it's not a good thing to go and do. And it's not good to have your family exposed to it. It's not good to have your relatives, your fiancés, your children, anything. It's not worth your life to go and do those things. But those things are there. And people who do ghost hunting, sometimes they come into contact with these things because people go and play and open these doors and they open those levels. And, if I walk into a place and I see that, I have walked into places where that has happened. And I've had to close those energy ulcers. And now, an energy spot, say, like if someone in your home that you moved into, that there was a murder there, well, the spot where the person laid sometimes because of that trauma, that energy, that can be an energy spot. Sometimes there's an energy spot because there's equipment over it. A water heater or a refrigerator was there, it makes energy. It can be any kind of level like that. And then it can also be a blood trauma. It can be something deeper and darker or something violent and um, traumatic. And so all of those things leave a stain. Sometimes those stains can be entry wounds through which energy can come through. And you, as a metaphysical person, I, as a metaphysical person, have to be able to walk in, know my stuff, look at something, and say, all right, that's an energy spot. That's not an ulcer. That's something that can be cleaned. A lot of times, energy spots can be cleaned and, just cleaned, smudged, new boundary, clean it with water, clean it with salt, clean it with vinegar, and those energy spots can be cleaned. A porthole is a little different. You have to understand what you're looking at and seal, break the cauterized platelets around the opening, let it heal itself, and it'll close. Now, if it's a gateway, it's not always as easy to close the doorway because the doorway can be, if it's ritually done, sometimes it's kind of like a lock. You have to figure out, all right, what do I do to get around this? How do I pick that lock? How do I close that over? You know, or how do I break that loose? So it can be a little different when it's ritual. Now, when I say ritual and people say magic and all that stuff, what ritual is, or magic, or any of it, it's not woo woo stuff. It's people who understand how to take elements of energy, take this and put it together and get a result. And people have been doing it centuries, 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 centuries. So if something is created through ritual, then it has to be dealt with a little bit differently because it may have kind of a code to it. But you can always bypass some of that and treat it as energy. Just push everything out of the way, push it back in, close that hole, let the break up the cauterized framework, let that close, and let it be, and seal that. Um, and that's not necessarily anything really difficult to do. It's just that you have to know what you're doing without getting infected or being bothered or being bit. Um, like I said, the boneless ones, there are so many energies that I consider in that realm, that kind of thing. Some of them are very interesting, scary. Some of them are very interesting and have form and consciousness. Some of them are created through ritual from centuries ago, so they look like something you don't know what you're looking at, but it's something, but it's something you don't comprehend because it's not something typically what we are used to seeing. And then when you get into energies that are projecting what they really look like, which energy looks like energy. I have seen flaming figures that riding tubes of flame, in Akashic Library meditations and stuff. So you see things that are symbolic. You see, if it's an energy, it doesn't necessarily have a physical form. So what is that energy? What does a streak of lightning really look like? you know, what do some of these things look like? Sometimes they're like being in the ocean and you see phosphorescent fish. You know, it's kind of like that. It's like you see things that have no form. Or even if they do, sometimes they have shapes that do not correlate with what we consider human. So that's what shadow people will look like. They're kind of like enough old energy, too old to know what they look like, but enough to mimic the shape of what they were or to mimic the shape of what they've seen. You got to know the difference because sometimes there are things that may look like they may be a simple ghost, may be a simple form, and they may be something else. So what are you looking at? Not everybody can tell. And there are little tests you do to see if it's got a consciousness, if it's reacting, or if it's a recorded energy, or if it's a base energy that's it's just kind of there because it's attracted to the light and the movement and the food and the thermal heat and the pretty lights. Or somebody invited it, you know. Somebody opened a doorway. Someone made an ulcer in the wall and said, "Come on in. Water's fine." And I will never forget. Mm-mm-mm. Um, I've seen, like I said, I've seen some things. There's some things I really can't discuss, but that I've seen that I'm like, oh Lord, because the brain, people take right now. There's a fad of people taking psychedelics and mushrooms to have Akashic Library meditation, or to get it results from the cerebellum. And in the 60s, they were doing that with pot and LSD and all that stuff. To then they would get addicted to the drug. They would have an effect. They get the effect, but then they would get hooked to the drugs, and then they were destroyed by the drugs. And there are people who do a lot of this stuff and to have a thrill, like it's like a thrill, but they don't understand it can be very consumptive. It can be very dangerous. It can be very bad to bring something into your life. And like I said, the reason I'm happy to bring these things up, I keep getting people who come to me with things they've done, things they're doing, things they want to do, and you have to go, well, because I do not know right now any young people that I've seen that are in metaphysics that have seriously understand how to get their system, protective system, their aura working correctly. I have not seen it. And it comes down to laziness. I mean, not that they can do it. So it's like, and then they think they're ready to go and do these things. And and people, you know, there was, I want to say it. There was the third eye. I drew a picture of a third eye for someone, and they went, "Well, that's not what I think of when I think of the third eye." Well, that's the third eye, you know. And it's like, people just don't know what they're looking at anymore, and but they think they know it. So that's when you have to sit back and go, "Ooh," but that makes uh, makes it where people come to me and say, "Help me clean this up. We have a problem, Houston." Um, it can be a problem. It can be a dangerous problem, actually. Um, have I known people that have died from being killed by energies or sludge or doing ritual? Uh, the most that I've ever seen is really people getting infected and then dying from the infection, dying from something that's eaten enough. Because what they do is they go for it's like when I was telling you, like the dimensional walls are made out of like a plasma with platelets in it, some kind of platelets that are acting like platelets. So whatever it is, this dark matter that the material is made out of, it's acting like our plasma does. It has platelets in it, so that acts like blood platelets. Um, so when this ooey gooey stuff gets in your body, it goes for the blood platelets. It goes for the blood. It goes for the blood cells, and then you get, leukemia and cancer, and you die. And but that's what they're made out of. There's some kind of plasma material that contains uh, those different kind of platelets, whatever it's eating. And in their world or their level, it's eating degraded material. So then when it gets into your material, you have blood, you have life, you have flesh. So I remember this really, really rotten, evil person I knew. She was a nurse. And I knew another nurse who was witchy, who worked with her, and she came, and I saw her one week, and you could just see it moving under her skin, And I didn't say anything. And my friend Renee came the next week and she went, "What is wrong with her?" And I said, "Well, they've been using that dark, they were using some dark magic trying to hurt some people. And when she opened herself up, it got in. And I swear to you, you could see it moving under her skin. It was the strangest thing. I'm trying to think, it looked like something. Oh, what is that? You know, it's escaped me at the moment. But there are these monster stories from like Cthulhu and all this stuff. It's like that Cthulhu-ish stuff. And it's like, the worms that moving under the skin. That's what it looked like. I thought, "Ugh, keep her away from me." And, but she opened herself up and she got infected. And it was visible to both of us in separate instances. She was like, "I don't know what that is, but I have never seen anything like that." And it's one of those things where you go, "Well, hey, you got worms?" And that's, they got worms. And, and there were people where I worked that sometimes they talk conspiracy theories, and they were talking parasites and things not too long ago, and I was like, well, there are a lot more kind of parasites than just bugs and worms, you know, and that's what some of this stuff is. And then it will eat the person until they die, and then if they're buried, then it can live in the corpse until it finds a frequency that magnetically they can go to in the dimensional hallways. They'll put out like a frequency, and they'll wait like a cell phone call. They'll put out a frequency until a frequency matches it. So somebody who goes by over the grave that has a throb, they call it throbbing, but that throbs to the same frequency, then it'll just follow it. Or if somebody does a magic thing where they're using that towards wherever this is, or the cemetery, or wherever this level that this being is on, and you're making a cell phone call to them, and they'll follow that frequency magnetically and go right to the person. And there are people in magic that I've known of that they call like a spirit of death through the corpse. So the corpse itself, even though it's dead, it's still quite, because it has our chakras in it. Even if it's a corpse and it's someone else's corpse, there are spirits and energies that will use the dead system. All they have to do is, the electrical system is still there. They just know how to process it, because we have many bodies. We have several layers of bodies. So just because the body is dead doesn't mean it is not functional. And spirits will use those. They can use that to connect into the other side. So when you're doing these things, sometimes, you can call for things that are hiding in what they call the dry place. The reason it's a dry place is the graves and stuff like that. Sometimes they stay dry in them. The corpse is definitely like something to hide in, like a husk. So that kind of thing. So it's an interesting thing. But right now we have a large movement of people. It's a cycle, and I see these things come in cycles, and we're hitting a cycle. And there are people coming in talking these things, talking about what they're doing, talking about what they're putting their hands in. And I had to pull stuff. I pull things off of people that they pick up, that they like trauma. There's sometimes they just pick up traumas, um, and those have a consciousness as well. So I didn't mean it to be so wookie woo maybe for some people, but I think people need to listen to understand because there are people who are ghost hunters and there are people who are ghost abusers and there are some people who want the thrill and some who want to go further than that. The thing of going to look for a ghost is not enough. Let's open a dimension. Let's go and look and say let's open a portal. What is a portal? I know where there's a portal. I know where there's something bad that happened. Let's go and see if we can pull that up. Ooh. And so what I'm trying to get to is for metaphysical people to understand the basics of what's around us, but also to those who go a little further for entertainment. Play cards. Go get a rabbit in a hat kit. Go do something like that. Go watch movies. Don't be going out punching holes in things you shouldn't. Don't be abusing spirits because sometimes, and a lot of people go ghost hunting and stuff and they don't know really what they're looking at. And sometimes it is ghost, sometimes it's a energy consciousness, and then sometimes it's not. So, in very rare cases, is it anything that's contagious or malignant or malicious? More cases than not, it's not. And you can go do those things and have a safe time and see a ghost and see a haunted place and get away and not be bothered. Um, what gets to me is that it's the people who want to go further, who think I know it all, I can do this, I can do that, and then they go do it, and then they think because once you do it, once you touch the deeper levels, what happens is it is a fluid. So when you do things and you go to the dimensional layers, you're also leaving a trail. You're leaving a fiber optic thread to it. So you may open it, but you may not be closing it. You may be you've just left a trail right to you, so they can make they can say, oh, they were interested. Let's go. So the entertainment factor of it, I understand. I understand it through it. I like ghost stories. I love ghost hunting. I love horror movies. But I also know the limits where it's not healthy or when it's not productive or when it's dangerous, just plain out dangerous or unhealthy for you or for those around you. You don't want those things in around your children, like I said. And a lot of people go, well, I can do this. And they open these things up like a can of worms and then wonder why their life just. And like I said, from the era I came from, there was a discipline, and you were taught respect. And now there is no respect. I think a lot of younger people really, they, some people do. I mean, I do see a resurgence of people interested in metaphysics and respect and discipline, but I also see some that are just totally out of control. And they think you can't tell me what to do. Well, have at it. You know, I'll stand here. You know, you can remember what you were told, but I'll stand back here. I don't want that splashing on me. But there's a lot of egotism involved. A lot of spoiled entitlement going on right now. And there are just some spoiled people who just think, well, if I want to do it, that's just because I should be able to because I want to. Go for it. You've been warned. You know, I think one of the greatest things that I learned, if it isn't necessary, if it isn't going to enhance your life, your art, or what you are doing, don't do it unless it is necessary. If it is not necessary, don't, don't do something that just because you're bored like that, in metaphysics. Learn about metaphysics. Sometimes you have to learn, and sometimes people have to get their fingers burnt. Uh, in the old days, they would just say, "Well, go play with those hot coals, and we'll see how long you can do it." And people would learn. So sometimes they learn, and sometimes they don't. But what I'm saying is, I'm not saying people learning because they weren't approaching it in a learning aspect. They were doing it because it was an ego thing. I want to shock people. I want to scare people. Well, that's kind of like the magicians I knew. And like I said, their lives were not enhanced by what they did. They were doing some stuff they shouldn't do. They were doing creation of consciousnesses that they shouldn't create. And I thought, really, what did it accomplish for them? Not much. Maybe they impressed their followers. Big what? They didn't get to live to be ripe old ages. They had knowledge to share, but they didn't get to share that. We're all very fragile. You know, um, we all don't live very long. Even when you get my grandfather who lived to be 88, he said it's never enough. You want to live more. And I believe that, but I'm always a realist, because I have Marfans. Back when I was 20, Marfan's people had a life expectancy of 40. Now they have a life expectancy of 70. So I'm already 62. So, life is very fragile. You know, if I make it a year, I go year by year. I'm like, oh yeah. You know, I'm like, well, I've died before, so I've had 32 extra years. It's a very fragile thing. You have to understand energy and the life and the world around you. I understand curiosity. And you can be curious and look at these things. Just don't be stupid. And if it isn't something you really need, don't really do it. Because there are, you don't want to look at your life and go, it wasn't worth it at the end. You want to go, okay, I got some things done. I made a path. I've gotten some things I wanted done. You want to do that. You don't want to look at it and go, it wasn't worth the cost. If it doesn't benefit your life, don't do it. If it's not, and two, I think people look at metaphysics as a get rich quick thing, or I can control somebody kind of thing. Wrong way to think about it. You can only control yourself. You might do some things and get some results, but you have to be careful. Everything you do, you're putting your energy into it. There is a reaction for every action. So you're going to, whatever you do, you're going to get a reaction. But if you're conscious about what you want in life, that's, to me, in metaphysics, what's wonderful is life, the blood in our bodies, the miracle that we live at all. That we're in these flesh sacks full of all these funky organs, and we're able to function and think and move and accomplish and create and love and cause you know creativity, cause chaos sometimes, but it's a beautiful thing. And life should be that. It should be, especially as I gotten older, it's like every day is a day someone else my age or someone I know that doesn't have. They've already, they're gone. And all of these people I knew in the 70s and 80s that are dead, because of foolishness, they could still possibly, be going. They'd be old. But I know people in their 80s and 90s and 100s. Um, it could happen. But, the candle burned too quick. And it would have burned a little slower for them if they did things differently. So just because you want to do something, don't just do it. It don't. That I think one of the things in the modern world, but when we were before the internet, if we wanted to study something, we studied. We had to order. We had to do. I've talked about that before. Now and back when people would go to bookstores, then I knew there would be a problem because you go to the bookstore and there would be a ceremonial book that really shouldn't have been out in the mainstream, sitting on, reprint, sitting right there for a teenager with full of angst going and picking it up. Go look at it. Chaos magician. I'm just going to cause chaos. That's what happened after the um, ceremonial magicians died out. It became replaced by chaos magicians, and I thought, chaos magicians, and they go, I am chaos. And I thought, oh yeah, that's gonna last a long time. And they would go get these books and do ceremonies and try and scare people and do their things, and I don't know what happened to any of them. But when they would go, I'm a chaos magician, you should be scared of me. I'm like, I don't think so. Go have fun. Um, that was the phase. Everyone lost any discipline. The only focus they had was to shock. And in metaphysics, what it can do for you is metaphysics, if you understand your place in the world and you understand that it is magic that you are alive, it is magic that you get to open your eyes and breathe the air and speak and think. That is magic. And we feel, or at least in my case, I feel grounded. I feel part of the earth. I can feel a storm coming. Nothing thrills me more than to stand out in a storm and feel the wind right before the rain comes. And I just feel so old and ancient and part of everything. And you find your center and you find your place in the dimensions. You find your place with who you are and what you put out and what you bring in and what you bring to others. And so metaphysics can be a great way to live, you know. But in my case, when I was young, because of the people I was hanging out with and what I learned through, we had to learn ritual. We had to know all that stuff. So I know it. I don't use all that in my daily life. I know it though, as so you have to understand it. So that if I go into a circumstance or I deal with someone who's doing something that shouldn't, or aiming at someone who cannot protect themselves, I have to understand what they're doing. Happens all the time. Especially when people get grudges and they want to zap people or they want to do something, against someone who cannot protect themselves. Um, you have to know what you're looking at. And that's, you know, it's just a whole different kettle of fish. But, for metaphysics, for me, I try to live happy, healthy, peaceful as much as possible. Of course, when you have when you have the energy that draws people to you, you don't have peace all the time. Because they bring all that stuff with them, and it's like, oh no, don't bring that into my house. No. I've had people from, uh, like I said one time, back in the 80s, 90s, early 90s. I lived in this old Victorian house. I had a great, what I called a seance room. It was where I do my readings. Beautiful. And this girl that was really sweet, she was really worried about this friend of hers. And she brought him over to my house. I was going to do a reading for him. She wanted me to do it. He walked into my house, and I looked behind him, and I could see this tall figure. And it was so burnt that its eyes, it didn't have any eyelids, so its eyes were open, and its mouth, because people, when they burn, sometimes, the muscles cinch up, and it had this hideous burnt grin, and it just looked like a burnt tree, but it was a person, but it was a spirit that was following. And I said, I knew its name was Daniel, and I said, what's that? Where'd you get that? And he said, oh, when I was a teenager, I liked to play on the Ouija board, and I met Daniel, and he's been my friend. And I said, well, that friend isn't a person. It was something else. It was something really bad. And I said, if you keep it, we can. If you can make a decision, I can help you get rid of that and let it go back where it came from. Or if you keep it, it will cause you an early death. It would, because it would it was that kind of thing. And he went, oh, it's my friend. I'm keeping it. I tossed them out of my house. I thought, you ain't bringing that thing in my house. Get out of here. And I threw him out. And I cleansed my house after that because I thought, dang. But he got that from working on a, Ouija board incorrectly. And that's not a slur against Ouija boards, because you can do a Ouija board and do hello and goodbye and do communication and close it, as long as you understand that you have to always follow the, but you can also pick up dead, derelict energies, and that's whatever that was. It was one of the energies that was not good, whatever it was. And I didn't want to process it. And even with it being that long ago, I can see it like yesterday. And see, when you see these things, and you can see it just like you see the people that were in my house, I mean, I could see it. It was following him. There was another guy, this other girl, that her boyfriend, he didn't believe anything, and she was worried about him. Of course, this is not in the same era, and he was a real pill. He was full of himself. So, came to my house. He wanted a reading so he could make fun of me, basically. But when I looked at him and his energy, you have a silver cord. That's an axon. That's something that connects your spirit to the other side. He had done a lot of drugs. So he had no protective system, nothing to filter out anything. And I will swear to you, I've never seen this before or since. There, it was just like a lunch line. There was this cord coming out of him, and I'll swear to you, it was just like a line of dead people. Most people do not look dead when they're spirits. These were dead spirits. These were discarnate things. And he had no protective system because of the damage he'd done. And it just looked like they were just holding onto the cord. So what they were doing is, in the energy he was putting out, he was feeding them. And I said, this, you need to get rid of these people, because they will cause multiple personalities. Well, after he quit laughing and calling me some names, he said, "You're just so full of it." And I said, "Go right ahead." So I went, when they left, again, I cleansed my house. Uh, 2 weeks later, guess what? Boyfriend, who I never saw again, had gone nuts, was running around downtown Chattanooga in his underwear, breaking store windows, and was put into a mental hospital because of multiple personalities. Well, sometimes people have multiple personalities that are not actual personalities. These were actual dead entities, dead people. And I mean, not of the living dead, even further than that. Dead, degraded, stinking, nasty, scary. And I remember him laughing and going, "You're just so full of it. I don't believe any of that." And I thought, well, whether you believe it or not, but sometimes people, in very rare cases, sometimes multiple personalities can be caused by other energies. You're too open. He was too open, and what can you say? But see, as a technician, if he had gone, "Yes, Mark, I would like to get rid of this," I could have disengaged those energies from him more than likely. But it would depend upon him because he would have to really get rid of those. Some people hold on to those energies. They know that something's there, and they feel like, but that's part of who I am. So they don't get rid of them. The guy that came in with the burned creature, I could have disengaged that. But I can tell you what, if I wouldn't bet that was in the 90s, probably 96. I don't think he's lived into his 30s and 40s. Because that thing, it was the kind that it was pure evil, pure evil, wicked. Yeah, and it wasn't just a dead person holding on to trauma. It was something wicked, and something from a layer that it really didn't need to be walking around. And see, the problem is, when then that person dies, then it's available for someone else. It'll hook a ride on somebody, or it'll, like I said, if somebody vibrates or puts out energy that it can pick up that frequency, it can go right to them. So, ugh, you know, it's different than a discarnate. Like one I went on, we called the Bad Biker Boy or whatever. Um, this little kid was being terrified. This dead biker guy was in coming out and scaring this kid in this house they lived in. And when I came in and looked at it, and I talked to the mother, I said, "You used to date bikers," and she went, "How'd you know? Nobody knows that." And this is one of the guys she used to date. He got it in a wreck and killed himself, and he was coming to the house. He wasn't necessarily trying to scare the child, but he was coming through her room. And so we had to disconnect that. And then that took care of the problem. So, but a lot of times there are people, even when they know it's bad for them, they won't get rid of these things. So, imagine if you stick your hand into tar and pulling it out, you're going to have tar on you. You're going to have this stuff on you. And sometimes it can make they're so devoid of a life or entertainment. They think that's entertainment. And to me, it's like I'd rather have popcorn and watch a good scary movie. If I want to scare myself, I'll just go to a movie. I'm not gonna have to have. I don't want to have to try and sleep with one eye open, going, "Okay, that's just you." Like when I moved here, and there was a ghost of a guy that died in a house, couple of houses over, and he would just stand there and mumble and do the same. And I was like, "Okay, I don't know why you're here. Just leave me alone." You know, It wasn't enough, so I had to get rid of it. So, um, you know, it's one of those kind of things. And this show has turned into probably something that I didn't expect for it to go. But I hope that, y'all have enjoyed it. I hope you're enjoying the information. It's warped and weird, but it is, I will tell you, if you want to do metaphysics, do basic studies. Don't always join a group, because a group, you always get somebody with an ulterior motive, somebody wanting to rule the world or wanting you to do the work. You know, do metaphysical studies, do what works for you, make sure you know what you're doing, and if you're a ghost hunter or you're psychic or you're just getting into it, know your stuff. Sometimes you have to get exposed to stuff to learn, but you don't need to be exposed to some of that stuff. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's not healthy. It's no good. But if you have to go into places and you see stuff you don't understand, sometimes if you don't know what to do nothing. Leave it alone. Get somebody who does know. Don't always, don't go trying to fix that clock when you don't know how to fix the clock. Don't be taking it apart trying to figure it out sometimes. It may work, but it may not. So it's the same thing with spirits and energies. You don't want to get into something that can be consumptive, because we have a hard time understanding sometimes we're just food to other things. Like food is, some things are food to us, we are food to other things. So now we're coming to the end of our show. I hope that people enjoyed this topic. Next time I come on, next week I will be in Chattanooga. The next week I will just do ghost stories, something simple. I had to do this because I've had to deal with some really weird stuff. And, just, it's a fad, it's a cycle, it's something that goes around. We go through it all the time. So now, if someone wants to meet me in person, I have a store in the Pea Ridge Flea Market, space 29, called Gypsy Moon. I'm there on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, usually after 11 in the morning and till about 4 in the afternoon. If you look on my Facebook or you look on Facebook Marketplace, you can see my ad. You can see my phone number if you need to call me if you want to make an appointment but you can't come on the days that I'm open. Of course, next weekend I'll be in Chattanooga, but usually during the week, if someone needs a reading, I can meet them there. It's just a few minutes away from me. I'm getting ready to start a cooking show very soon. And very soon, hopefully by fall, I will have my album ready. It's recorded. Now we're just having to get it done. The Witching Tree. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So, if you want to come see me there at the Pea Ridge Flea Market. It's right, if you go in, there's an indoor market at the very end of the line, and I'm like the second door away from the store away from the indoor market. And you can come see me there, and there's other people there that do metaphysics, that have stores there. There's Marjorie and Dallas have a store in number 4 that's across from me. They're like in a little, little buildings across the parking lot. Number 4. Um, Elfie has a great store inside the business. There's Elfie and Peggy and Cindy and Sandy and Polly and Matthew and Julian. There's a guy there. Oh my gosh, he makes the best pastries. He's down a few spaces from me. He's like around 23, 24. But makes great stuff. So come down, see some cool stuff. Come and see us. I'll be open tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday. And I hope that all of you out there in the dark, I hope that you enjoyed this show. Um, I think it's beneficial to those who are thinking about playing with some energy because you got to be careful. And just if it isn't necessary, don't do it. All right, kids, I'm going to sign off. And to all of you out there, good night. Good night.
Good job.